You were born in, were you born in Ramallah?
Yes.
And tell me a little bit about where you were born, what house, where you lived, things like that.
I was born in Ramallah. I don't know what house, because we used to rent space, and I remember 1, 2, 3 locations as a young boy that we lived in Ramallah.
Were they all in the same neighborhood?
When you say neighborhood, Ramallah is a village, so it didn't make any difference what neighborhood as such, because we all went to the same school.
Same school. Did you live close
all
to the
us-
menorah, the cemetery,
All us poor folks went to the same school. The ones that had money went to the Friends.
Well, tell me what you remember about, do you remember anything about the first place you rented? Not much?
No.
Okay, how about the other houses?
I remember the last house that we were in, that belonged to a widower. Apparently her husband must have died in the States and left money, so she built a modern home in Ramallah, and we had the lower portion. And when it rained heavy, it was a 1-bedroom location with a kitchen outside, and the bathroom, you had to have a tortilla next to the bed for the night action, and in the morning you walked around to the outhouse and did what you had to do. And if it rained very heavy, we get up in the morning and we'll find our shoes floating. There would be about 6 inches of water, and we'd have to open the door to let the water out. So, but it was if you ask me if I would do that again, I personally would want to relive my life for the first 12 years.
And so this house, obviously no indoor plumbing.
No indoor plumbing.
And have electricity or no?
No, it was the
gas.
The gas, kerosene.
Kerosene lamps.
Yeah, kerosene lamps.
Now, that was up until you were 12, did you say?
Up till I came to the United States. We departed to the United States from that house.
I see. And who lived in the house with you?
My mother and my brother.
And your father at the time
was in the United States.
Was in what part of the U.S.?
I think he was in Michigan.
Okay. And
but if there was another house, I think it belonged to the Harbs that I lived in, and my sister was at that time alive, and my mother, I, and my younger brother lived in that house.
That was before that was the middle house?
I remember that being the first house.
The first house, I see.
The second house it was a store, بشارع السهل, and that belonged to Asad Sam'an, who was my mother's uncle, and he was the Mukhtar al-Balad, not Mukhtar Dar Jagab, but Mukhtar. All of the Makhatirs would select one to represent them for the government, and that was Asad Sam'an. And we lived in his store. It wasn't a home, it was a store. And this is at the time my sister died in that house, and they had the funeral, but they wouldn't allow me to attend the funeral.
And that store was on one of the main streets, I guess?
شارع السهل.
And what do you remember about your grandparents?
Uh, from which side?
Well, both sides. Who was your father's, both grandparents? Who was your father's side?
My father's side, my Sido Aziz, who I'm named after, Sido Bulus, I'm sorry, who I'm named after, was in the States. And Sito Lebibe was living in the house that he built. And she was a student of the German schooling, very strict, very clean, did not wear the tope. She wore the normal dress, and she brought her children well disciplined and well guided. In fact, there was 3 aunts that I had. One of them was married to a harp, Victoria. She married into Dar es Salaam. And another, Maria, was also married to a harp, Dar es Salaam. And the third one was married to someone from Jordan, Matarwi, and of course my dad. And I remember Dad very faintly because he came to the United States, I believe, in 1936, 37. So I remember him faintly. And we lived with our mother in Ramallah. And the grandparents from the mother side, my grandpa was deaf and mute.
What was his name?
Isa
Isa what?
Jagab. He was the brother of the mayor. And I used to spend my summers with him في العزبة بالتين for maybe 1 or 2 months. And I never believed that he was deaf as a young boy. And I had to speak to him by sign language. It's his own sign language. And I remember lighting up a firecracker while he was on the ladder picking up the figs, and there was no movement at all, so I knew darn well that he was deaf. But as a young boy, I just couldn't imagine that he did not hear anything. And he was a farmer, and I enjoyed being with him on his farm, especially Bilazbe in the summertime. And we developed a close relationship, even though we could not communicate. He had 3 daughters and 3 sons. My mother was the youngest, and Ziada Shamiya's mother was the oldest, Maria. But I don't know why, but he favored his younger daughter's children. So we were the favorites for him. That's something I had no control over. And he used to have a donkey. And when it came time to pick up the olives, I would go with them, basically to bring the olives back to the press. And I would volunteer to walk the donkey, because you couldn't ride the donkey because he had the load of the olives on him. But I would volunteer to walk the donkey to the press in order to ride the donkey back to the to the olive farm. And if I had to do it again, I would be very happy to do so.
So you spent a lot of time in I guess they had figs and olives?
They had figs and olives, yes.
And olives. So
Yeah.
you spent like the summer helping?
Yes.
Yes. And that was pretty typical of a lot of families that had the figs and olives?
Yeah, most of the Ramallah people prior, I believe most of them were farmers. The only exception to that would be the Ajlouny family. The Ajlouny family had carpenters. My father was a carpenter. His cousins were blacksmiths and shoemakers and various other trades, teachers. Ajlounys became the first, I believe, doctors in Ramallah as well. And the first principal, the Ustaz Mahfouz Ajlouny, became the first principal of the schools in Ramallah. The rest of the families, especially Dar Ibrahim and Dar Harb, and had lands. As I was told, and I don't know how true, is that the Ajlounys came into Ramallah and they were added to the Jagab family. They were not part of the Jagab family, but they were, the Jagab family absorbed them and they gave them lands that nobody wanted at that time. And some of those lands turned out to be very valuable at later dates because they were outside the city. But, you know, that's the way the cookie crumbles.
Well, now so you said your grandfather on your father's side was already in the States, so you didn't know him while you were in Ramallah.
No, I knew I had a grandfather, and he used to send us gifts from America. I remember wearing the yellow raincoat and the yellow boots that Grandpa would send to us as children. And of course, you know, my mother brought, she brought two girls first. My mother was married at 13. And she brought the first girl who died because she didn't know what, you know, childbirthing was all about. And the second girl died at the age of 9. When I was born, he wanted to know that it was a son. So they had to take a picture of me with my sister standing next to me, showing my testicles. And I still have that picture at home.
And that was so he would come to visit and see his son, right?
No, we came to America.
Oh, okay.
He was here in America. We came to America, and of course, when I came to America, they said this was your father, and I said, how do you do? So that was the first time I knew I had a father, but it was the first time that I met him. And the first time I met him, I was 12 years of age.
Now, what did your grandfather and father, what were their trades here in the U.S.?
My grandfather was illiterate. He believed in education, and he sent money for his wife to educate his daughters and son. My father was given the opportunity. He was put in private schools to be educated, but he never took advantage of it. The girls did. They graduated from French school back when hardly anybody knew how to read and write in Ramallah. And I was told that my great-grandfather, who was called Jirius, was a teacher. And he became a teacher this is hearsay, I don't know how true it is, that he switched denomination from Greek Orthodox to becoming a Catholic because they gave him the position of being a teacher. I guess at that time and place in Ramallah, being a teacher, maybe just knowing the alphabets and teaching people how to read. And that's the story that I got from about my great-grandfather.
Now, so did you go to the municipal school in Ramallah, the government school?
Yes, I went to the government school, and I was Arif Asaf. You know what Arif Asaf means? We sat in the classroom. The teachers changed. We did not change. We sat, and at the end of the period, the rotation will come in, and my job was to keep the students quiet during the changing of the teachers. And I can tell you from my experience, they said punishment does not deter the crime. Nonsense. The amount of noise or revelry that took place in that classroom depended on the teacher coming in. If the teacher coming in was quite disciplinarian, and one of them was quite disciplinarian, was Ustaz Abdullah Mughanna. His son was in our class. His son was Adil. And we used to feel sorry for Adil because most of us in the class were without fathers. The fathers were all in America. And Abdullah, the Ustaz Abdullah, would use his son as an example. If he did anything wrong, he really punished him quite hard to let us know that he has no preference and you guys better behave yourselves, or if you don't, you're going to get it. And we used to behave ourselves quite well when he was the teacher coming in. And another teacher that was coming in was quite disciplinarian was Saba Sahuriya. Both of these teachers are dead, may God rest their soul. And the teacher that was loose was Ustaz Faris. And Ustaz Faris, if he was coming in, that classroom was a shambles. It just, free for all. Because no matter who I put, my job was to put the name of the rowdy students on the blackboard, and when the teacher came in, they opened their arms and they got hit. And but when Faris came in, no matter how many names I had on the blackboard, it didn't make any difference. He erased them and continued with the class. So in the end, I quit even putting names on the blackboard. And the student body used to call me Al-Khityar, the old man. Yeah. That was my nickname between them. And there was about, if my memory was correct, it was closer to about 60 students in the class. So when they say class sizes are too big when there are 20, I disagree with that. It depends on how the teacher conducts himself and how the student body behaves in that class. We all behaved quite well. Ramzi, I noticed, I met one of my classmates here yesterday. Ramzi Bateh is one of my classmates. And he says, hello, and I said hello, and we talked, and I looked at him and I said, yes, I know that you're Bateh. And I asked him, there was another Bateh, Tabanje, it means fat. And I said, what happened to him? And he said he died. And he says, what was your name again? I said, you should remember, I was the Arif Asaf. He says, yes, but I forgot. And I said, My name is Bulus. He always said, oh yes.
Well, that was in, if you were 12, then you only went,
To
what
the
grade? You went through 6th grade or
No,
5th
fourth.
grade?
Fourth.
4th grade.
We didn't start school until we were 7.
Mm-hmm. Well, you
Yeah.
touched on, oh, go ahead.
And I was born in November, so I was,
Had to wait.
yeah.
You touched on a little bit of your life with your grandfather and helping him in the summer in your school. As a kid, when you were a kid growing up in Ramallah, what kind of activities went on? What was going on? What was exciting? You know, what was...
Exciting. We used to play football, and our goalpost was a couple of stones on this side, another couple of stones on that side, and we played football in the streets. Of course, there weren't that many cars going around at that time, so you had the street to yourself, basically, and that was the basic activities. Other activities we would make our own airplanes and fly them during the windy season. That was about the extent of it. Or we made our own toys. We used to get the ball bearings of old cars or vehicles and make our own, put 4 ball bearings on a sanduk khashab, if you will, with a steering mechanism, and go down the Shara Batunia, or Yafa at that time we called it. You go up the hill and slide down. And for mischievous acts, if you want mischievous acts, what is it? They used to bring watermelons from Haifa or Jaffa or whatever they were coming from, and they were climbing up the steep terrain, and we would have one guy climb up from the center, climb into the truck, and pass watermelons to us, and we would put them on the street so the driver cannot see us from either side of the mirrors. And when he's out, gone, we would take the watermelons and keep them to ourselves. So there was mischief between us. And it was basically not mischief to be destructive. It was mischief to be something to do or something to have. And of course, the Ramallah had its own fruit trees and fig trees and so forth. And I remember quite well, there was a woman from Dar Abdel Noor. She had a real large fig tree right in front of Ziada Shamiya's home, and she used to sit underneath the tree, and the tree was so big that it extended onto the street on both sides. And as young children, one guy would keep her busy while the other guy stole the figs, if you will. But it was a challenge for her, basically, that she couldn't prevent us from taking what we wanted to eat. It wasn't for us to sell or anything else of that nature. It was just, okay, we have some ripe figs here, let's have some.
It was a challenge.
It was a challenge.
Now the Ramallah at the time, some of the roads were paved, the main roads,
Yes.
stoned. What were they? There were sidewalks? Describe it.
No, there was no sidewalks as such. There was, if you had 1 or 2 cars pass by in Ramallah during the day, you were lucky. So the road, the Jaffa Road, was the one most frequently used. When I say most frequently, there was no need for us going, crossing the street to stop on the corner and look left and right. You knew that they were coming.
Now let's see, so when you say you're 12, and what year did you come to the U.S.?
1946.
46, okay. You're probably still a little young to remember. Did you remember anything about any tensions of things that were brewing up or anything like that? When you're 12, probably not, but what did you recall anything that had to do with any
Arab-Israeli conflict?
yeah, pretty much. I mean,
No, we knew that, or you overheard that there was problems, but none was going on. But I knew that after I left, I knew Ramallah had their own security forces. I think the people that were there during that time can give you a better explanation than I can.
So your dad was here, he'd send money back home. Y'all went there when you were 12. What was the route you took?
We went from Ramallah through to the Lid. From Lid we took the train to Egypt and to Cairo, and Cairo to Alexandria, and Alexandria to Naples, New York. It was the first ship that after the Second World War, SS Vulcania, and it was a transport ship for troops, and of course the beds were bunks, and it took us about close to a month between first embarking and disembarking, with almost a month period.
Did you have any, did you know you were gonna go overseas any time before that, or just came up for going? Or?
No. We know that our father wanted us to come to the States, but the war ensued, and my father became a soldier for the U.S. Army, and waited till the war was over, and we were summoned, and we came.
Was your father deployed anywhere when he was in the Army?
Not that I know of.
And so you all came to New York.
But I know my grandfather was on both sides of the fiasco.
Oh, tell me about that.
You know that Ramallah immigrants in the United States were similar to the Mexican immigrants today. They came to gather money and send it back home to have their families live off that money, or build a house, or buy a farm, or whatever the case might be. And they normally stayed 4 or 5 years and came back. And when they came back, they would have a son or a daughter, wait till the first one is born, and leave the wife pregnant with the second, and depart, and come back 4 or 5 years later again. So if you look at some of the older generation of families in Ramallah that their parents were here in the States, you would see a spread, 2 together, and then there's a spread, then another 2, and so forth. It was not by design, it was to make a living. And my grandfather was in America. He got caught when he came back during the First World War. And so the Turks recruited him. He was a Christian, as a Christian, he was not allowed to carry arms. And he told me that he escaped from Turkey, he doesn't know where, all the way to Palestine. And came back to the States. And when he came back to the States, they took him in as a soldier in the American Army. So he was on both sides of the conflict for the same war.
And that was during World War I.
World War, yes. But he had to work in the kitchen because it was Christians. And he was telling me that if you got sick at that time, they basically gave you something to drink and to basically to kill you, not to treat you. And he said what saved his life is they gave him the stuff to drink because he was sick. And he said the nun who was the nurses in there looked at him and basically don't take it. And he didn't. And he survived, and he walked from wherever it was in Turkey all the way to Palestine. He said it took him about a month and a half. He used to walk during the night and hide during the day, using the train track as a guide to where they were going. And some of them say they had it rough.
They don't know. Amazing. Well, when you all came to the States, you came into New York, and is that where your father was in New York?
No, my uncles were in New York.
Your uncles.
My uncle Jarab was in New York. He met us, and we stayed in his house for 1 day or 2 days, I don't remember. And I remember waiting because when we came it was Easter time. And I remember waiting on the ship. Here I came from Ramallah, and you would see maybe one car a day if you were lucky. And here I'm in the ship and I'm looking at Long Island or New York or Brooklyn, whatever it is. And there's an endless stream of cars, you know, lights passing. And as a young boy, you would wonder, you know, what is going on out here? You know, is there an end to these cars that are constantly flowing? And of course, our uncle came and picked us up, as I said, and we stayed in his house. And then we left for Florida. My father was in Jacksonville. And when I came, and they said, "This is your father," and I said, "How do you do?" And that was the first time I met my father.
And that was in Jacksonville.
In Jacksonville.
You arrived to Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Did y'all take a plane from New York to Jacksonville?
No, it was a train.
A train to Jacksonville. And your father was in Jacksonville. What did he do? What was his?
My father's profession was a carpenter, but he had a restaurant on Main Street.
What was the name of the place?
I can't recollect, but I recollect washing dishes in that place, where I had to put a milk crate to reach the sink so I could do the dishes.
Now, once you...
Now, if you ask me, do I regret or am I sour? Absolutely not.
And what about, did you continue your education here in the States?
Yes, I did. We started in Florida. The business either bankrupt or was foreclosed, I don't remember, as a young boy. But we went to Detroit, and I went to school there. I remember we lived on Stewart Street in Detroit, and we used to take the bus. The bus was 5 cents going to Hutchinson Middle School. And from there, in the middle school, they gave an exam. In Detroit, they had schools where in each district there was a high school. And you had to go, if you lived in that district, you had to go into that high school, except for 2 schools. One was called Cass Technical High School, and the second was called the High School of Commerce. It was right on 2nd and Cass, and you had to qualify with an exam in order to go into that school, because it was open to all the student body from Detroit, provided you met certain criteria. Fortunately for me, I did meet that criteria, and I went there and I studied it taught you a profession, and it also prepared you for college. And the profession I took at my father's behest was air conditioning, heating, and refrigeration. And I graduated from Cass Tech High School and went to work. After working for 2 years, I decided to go back to college, which I did. But in the interim, I went back to Palestine, married, and went to the University of Kentucky. And I graduated from the University of Kentucky, and my son attended my graduation.
Well, now, what year did you go back and get married?
1957.
1957. You went back to Ramallah. Did you know who you were? Did you have someone in mind? Or
No. People had ideas as to who they wanted me to marry, but I was not part of their scheme of things. I was introduced to various young ladies, and I chose the one that I wanted, and I asked her directly, not her father nor mother or anything else of that nature. The girl was from Jerusalem. Her family lived in Katamon originally, but their village was, I can't think of the name at the moment, Taibe. And her mother, may God rest her soul, she made a party and brought in about 10 young eligible ladies for me to meet, because she thought I had my eyes on her daughter, and she didn't want her daughter to come to the States. So she introduced me to the 10 young ladies, and we chatted, etc., and so forth. But somehow the 10 young ladies did not meet my expectations. I don't know what my expectations were, but they did not meet my expectations, and I wound up marrying her daughter.
And what was her name?
Afaf. She was a working girl. She was working for Middle East Airlines, responsible for the flights coming in and going out, and the flights were coming in and going out of Columbia at that time. And we married, and I brought her to the States, and I've been with her ever since.
What was her last name?
Nasser, N-A-S-R.
And
But in retrospect, you ask me, I gave my father his first down payment to buy a house in Detroit. And that money came from, I had selling newspapers. I had the newspapers in Detroit were the Times, the Free Press, and the News. And the Times came out about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The news came out around 6, and the Free Press came out around 8. So I had a route in each one of those papers. So I had 3 routes. And the difficult thing was when it came time to collect money, not to mix one with the other. Let's say that you subscribed or you were receiving the Times and the Free Press, or you were receiving the Times and the news. So when I came to collect for the Times, I'd ring the doorbell. We would collect money for the Times, and then I come back after I finished collecting for the Times. I come back and collect for the news or the Free Press, and the guy would look at me and he said, "Didn't I just pay you?" I said, "Yes, you did, but you paid me for one paper, and I'm collecting for the second." And of course, the money. The nice thing about it was the paper was 5 cents each. So you were collecting 25 cents, and the Sunday paper was 15. So 15 and 25 was 40. So most people would give you the 50 cents and tell you, keep the change. So we were making the extra 10 cents tip. Not most people, not everybody. And from that, I saved about $600, and we bought our first house in Detroit. And the house was $4,500. The down payment was $600, and I gave Dad the $600, and we bought our first house.
And that was, what year was that? That's after you came up from Jacksonville?
Yeah, that was Jacksonville. That was somewhere in 40, either 50 or 51.
Now, when you say your first times you came to New York with the Jacksonville, you were 12. What was in being in Jacksonville, say, what was your feeling at 12, just coming from Ramallah? Do you have much?
No, we did not speak proper English.
Mm-hmm.
We were being made fun out of. Some children had sympathy towards us. Some had animosity, but you moved with the times. This is what was the deck of cards was thrown us, and you don't sit down and cry. You do the best you can for the time you have.
And once you, of course, got to Detroit, there was you had some, at least probably some
family
relatives,
yes,
family here
yes.
in Detroit. And as a youngster, do you remember those days of with your cousins or with family members?
Oh, definitely. We were young. Nadim is my age, that, a little bit older than I am. Kareem is obviously older, and maybe a year or so. But at that time, the Ajlouny family would meet in somebody's house once a month. So all the cousins and relatives would get to know each other. And the rest of the Ramallah people in Detroit say, why can't we do the same? And from there, the thought of establishing the American Ramallah Federation came into being. Nadim was one. I was another. Kareem, Mufid Harb. May God rest their souls. Ghannam, and also the other gentleman, he just died about a year ago. I can't think of his name at the moment. He was in charge of the Educational Fund, secretary. Do you recollect what his name was? Anyway, and that's how the Federation came into being. I was always at odds with them. I was the odd man out because they had their own set patterns of things, and I did not agree with their patterns, and I still fight with their patterns. You've probably seen that all through the years, because you either, if you have a structure, you run the structure the proper way, and you abide by the rules of the structure, and there is no hanky-panky, and the elections were hanky-panky at the beginning, as you will imagine, and I just was never part of it, and resented it, and never ran for any office. I was on the scholarship committee for years, and we as young men in Detroit noticed that when somebody died, flowers would be bought, and the cemetery would get filled with flowers, and you go the second day and there would be no flowers at all. So we decided that rather than give flowers, to give money for the scholarship fund. And so that's how the scholarship fund began to grow. Unfortunately, the younger generation did not follow through, and now they're taking that money. There's still money given to the, I don't, let me retract here. I don't, if somebody dies that I care for, I give money on his rojo to the United Palestine Appeal, rather than give the flowers and send the deceased family a note that I've donated money on his rojo for the poor. And that was the case, but now, unfortunately, and I don't know why, they give this money to the deceased family. I don't think there's any family in America now that cannot afford to bury their own. And these are the things that irked me about the Federation and so forth, and I just refused to partake. When my father died, the money that was collected, I think it was $7,000, I gave it to the Federation. And when my mother died, there was another sums. I gave it to the Federation, and I told them I want to establish the Aziz Ajlouny Scholarship Fund. And these monies are not to be used for the scholarship fund, but the interest from them was to be used for the scholarship fund. And believe it or not, my father has been dead for 20 years. I've increased that sum to maybe about 50,000. Today is the first day that they acknowledged the Aziz Ajlouny Scholarship Fund in writing, and now they will abide by the wishes of the donor that this money goes to X college for Y profession. Before, they never did that, and I just stopped giving them funds or anything else of that nature. I worked all of my life. I am 79 years of age, as you could see, and I still work. I consider life a challenge. Thank the Lord, I am not in need of any money to live, but I consider making money is a challenge to me. And I will take on any challenge that comes along my way. Now, if you ask me what I did after graduation, I worked for international companies. One of them was Westinghouse. I was the service manager for the international division, and then I went to work for Worthington and Carrier corporations, all in the international division as a service manager. And I used to travel all around the world, taking care of air conditioning equipment, etc. And I stopped doing it when I came home one day and I was walking in the front door, and my oldest son said, "Hi, Dad, when are you leaving?" And here I'm just walking in. And the reason for that is because I used to come in for a week or so and then had to go to another country. Fortunately for me, I've seen almost every country around the world, thanks to my profession and my job. And then when he told me that, I stopped and I established a division in New York. It was a division that was called Kinney Mechanical Maintenance. It was a division of Warner Communication. And this division took care of the mechanical, electrical, plumbing needs of high-rise buildings. Some of my clients, and I established a total. There was no action in that division. I established every single one of the customers, or I obtained every single one of the customers. Among my customers were the World Trade Center. The 2 towers that came down were under contract to my company. And First National City Bank in California, the Bank of America in Paris, the Montparnasse. I was a consultant on many large projects. I don't think I should not be blowing my own horn in this interview, so I would stop at this stage.
That's quite all right. It's part of the history.
Yeah.
It's part of the history. When you got married and you have kids?
Yes, I had the first boy.
His name?
His name is, I named him Aziz after my father. When he went to AUB, he chose to change it to Paul against my wishes, but this is what he wanted. And there was a spread of 7 years. Couldn't afford to have a second person to feed, and brought in the girl. And there's 7 years spread between the first and the second. And then the last one, which was Omar, and there's a 3-year spread between them. So this is what happened. If you want the history, I can give you further, but I don't know how much time I have with your thing.
Well, we have as much time until the next one gets here, so we have time.
I established, when I went to school, my brother-in-law was a student with me.
This is at University of Kentucky?
Yes.
And what caused you, first of all, to go down to Kentucky?
Because I studied air conditioning, heating, and ventilating in high school, and I worked at it. And the only 2 schools that had that curriculum were Cornell University and University of Kentucky. Cornell being the partner of Carrier. I'm sorry. Carrier was a graduate of Cornell.
Okay.
So he endowed his college with that curriculum to facilitate his business. Carrier's partner was a graduate of the University of Kentucky. So he endowed his college with a mechanical degree, but geared towards heating, ventilating, and air conditioning. And that's why I went to Kentucky. I was chasing the profession rather than the school.
Okay.
And my brother-in-law was with me. He graduated, and he went also to University of Illinois at Urbana and got his master's. And when he finished, he said he wanted to go back home. I said, his name was Yusuf. I said, Yusuf, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going to teach. And he went there and taught. And he saw, at that time it was 67, the Israeli war. They asked him to become a spy on his students. He refused. And so they kicked him out of the teaching profession. And he came back to the States and he says, Paul, I want to open up a newspaper. And he said, I need your help. At that time, I think the industry was changing from the lead typing to the modern equipment. So the lead typing equipment was almost for peanuts. So we bought a trailer load of equipment for $30,000, shipped it, established a printing press, and established a newspaper. And it lasted from 67 till about 80 some odd, 20 some odd years. He was kidnapped and killed. I continued to run it until Arafat came in. And when Arafat came in, I closed the newspaper in Jerusalem. I was accused by the U.S. government of setting up satellite communication for the PLO. I was tried. I was given a 2-year sentence. And I served 3 months out of the 2 years. And in Kentucky, the federal prison in Kentucky. So I went back to my alma mater, but this time as a jailbird. And the judge saw fit to let me out after 3 months. In the 3-month period, I wished I stayed a little longer in jail because I was learning how to type. I never learned how to type. I taught class, and I obtained halal line for the federal prisons. I petitioned and got the federal government to make a halal line because they had a kosher line. I said, if there's a kosher line, why not a halal line? And the halal line is my product and my activity during my imprisonment. So I've seen all kinds of positives and negative things in life. You always have to think in the positive form rather than the negative form. And when I was in jail, I used to tell myself, I'm in a secure place. I'm not in jail. People outside can't come in. It's not that I can't go out.
Well, give us the name of the paper in Jerusalem.
Al-Fajr, meaning the dawn. It was in Arabic and English. English was a weekly edition. The English edition was pure news, no BS. It was subscribed to. Most of the subscribers were universities. And the federal government, the CIA, had 10 copies. The State Department had copies, and every great university in America was subscribing to the Al-Fajr English. And I have it all on microfiche. One day I changed it from microfiche to what do you guys call it, the discs?
Files, yes.
The discs. I have it also on discs. My dream in life is to open up an orphanage. And by the way, I bought the land for it. I bought 25 dinars in Ain Arik to have that orphanage built, and to also to have a library in Ramallah, in which we would, on the walls of the library outside, I've talked to the mayor, and the mayor is willing to donate land. All of the martyrs in the wall around them. My dear friend and brother, who I worked with for 20 years, was Abu Jihad. And Abu Jihad kept a log of everything that happened in his life. I saw his son in Amman on my last trip, and I told him, your father had these books, where are they? And he said, I know they were in Iraq because he was friendly with Saddam and he kept them in safe places in Iraq. He says, I got them and I'm putting them all in discs. I said, I hope you will not erase anything and let the chips fall where they may. And he said, absolutely not, they wouldn't be authentic. And he promised that if I opened the library that he will give these discs to be part of the library, and I would call the library Yusuf Nasser Abu Jihad Memorial. Because for Abu Jihad, he was I talked to him almost every day of the week for 20 years. So he was closer to me than my own brother. And I feel that the Palestinians have ignored what he has done for the cause of Palestine. I also have a philanthropic vein in my blood. I established the UPA. You've heard of it? The reason I established the UPA is the company that I worked for, that I established, Kinney Mechanical Maintenance, was all Jewish. I was the only non-Jew as an officer of the corporation. And when I went to work for them, I told them, you must know in advance that I am anti-Zionist. I'm not anti-Semitic because I'm a Semite myself. And therefore, if you have any objection of me being anti-Semitic, anti-Zionist working for you, speak your mind now, and I'm not the man for you. And they said, all our objection is to make a profit, and your philosophy and your belief are your own. I said, thank you, and we went to work on that. They used to invite me to the UJA dinners, UJA meaning United Jewish Appeal dinners, and I got the idea from them to establish the United Palestine Appeal. And I got a hold of the United Jewish Appeal Charter. Why invent the book if it is there? And where it said the Jewish people, I'd put down the Arab people or Palestinian people. The state of New York saw fit to reject my request for a 501c3 charter. I said, very good, thank you very much. Now, can you please reject the charter of the United Jewish Appeal? And they said, how come? I said, it's word for word, so you cannot be against one thing because it is Arab, and for another for it is being Jew. The people that worked on that, by the way, were Jonathan Kuttab. They used to work for Sherman and Sterling. And after Jonathan Kuttab was Assam Salah. I think you know Assam. And they formulated, and we finally got the charter, and I opened up offices in Washington, and our first president was Rania Salem, George Salem's wife, and from there we continued to function, and we've been functioning for almost 30 some odd years. We have an executive director in Washington. I am no longer on the board. My wife is on the board, not even under the name of Ajlouny, but under the name of Afaf Nasser, because Ajlouny was convicted, and I didn't want to tarnish the image of the organization. So I stepped down and put my wife in place. But I attend all the meetings and the functions of the structure. And it's in good hands with, I put in George Salem as the board member. I put Assam Salah as a board member. And of course myself was a board member, and then Afaf. So you can say we had controlling interest because it was a 5-member board. And the boys have functioned marvelously. They are still on the board. Assam still is, and so is George. And they are dedicated to the structure, and we hope to continue for it for a long time. The thing that I detest about Ramallah people, I came up the hard way. My father was not wealthy. I don't fault him for that. Excuse me. I'm very grateful to him for giving me the guidance in my life. But my main pet peeve about Ramallah people, and I'm one of them, is they are not generous with their funds. My wife has also instilled in me, and I had it, but she instilled it further. أعطي ربنا بعطيك. And I don't find that, and I find that to be true, by the way. The more you give, the more God or whoever He is provides. I don't find that in the Ramallah people. Unfortunately, I don't see it at all. And that bothers me, because I am a part of that community. They like to show off, but they don't like to contribute. Some of my cousins would say, تعال نسوي لك عزومة نذبح لك خروف. I said, but rather than ذبح لي الخروف, whatever the cost of the kharuf is, give it to the poor people. I don't need for you to show me that you have money and you respect me. You respect me by being generous to others, not to me. And I find that unfortunately missing in the Ramallah community. And I don't know why. Maybe I'll make a study of it one day, but I don't know why. You were asking me, what am I doing today at 79? I can tell you what I'm doing today at 79. Ramallah men, especially, like to disinherit their sisters. I've established a company trying to recover some of the inheritance of the sisters. Why? Their mother delivered them the way she delivered you. Why should you oh, I'm going to give my sister X number of dollars. You're not giving your sister anything. This is her right. She is the daughter of X and Y. She's the daughter of Mr. X and Mrs. Y. You both came from the same location. So why do you say that I'm generous and I'm giving my sister something? You're not generous. You're being selfish. And this is a train of thought that seems to permeate among the Ramallah males. And it is, I'm sorry to say, but it seems to be more prevalent from having opened my business to see it, that it is more prevalent in Dar Ibrahim, Dar Yusuf. I don't know why, but this is maybe because they intermarried. You know, you married your sister, I married your sister. I'm not going to give your sister anything. You're not going to give my sister anything. So therefore, we're even. But that's not life. Life is, she is the daughter of Mr. X. Mr. X died. She's entitled to her share of whatever is 10 cents or $100. She's entitled to her share of the proceeds of her father. And unfortunately, I'm being now despised by the males of Ramallah for trying to recover some of the proceeds of inheritance from their family. I don't find that to be negative for me. I find that I'm doing a good job trying to recover what is rightfully theirs. But these are the things that I get irked about my family, and I'm a Ramallah person. I will always be. But these are my pet peeves about my people. Thank you very much for the interview, and I hope I haven't bored you with the details.
Not at all. Thank you very much. Anything we didn't talk about that you would like to?
No, I think you opened a lot of wounds for me.
That's okay. It's good and bad, and we want to get everything. That's part of it. What do you see, not that anyone can see the future, but what do you see for Ramallah, or what your maybe even hopes or even aspirations for Ramallah down, in the future?
I see in the future Rabbna Yarham al-Atqiyya, and I'm one of them, so I'm not, if we are out of the way, I think the younger generation will succeed. The younger generation is not coming in because of the older, obstinate generation. If you attend these meetings, you would see that it's only 4 or 5 old-timers trying to obstruct or say whatever they want to say. And if I were to see the contributions, besides the bullshit that they have in their money contributions into the structure is very minimal. And they're all wealthy. You have a young guy that came in wealthy, and he's trying to restructure the organization in the proper business fashion. So what I see for the organizations, Rabbna Yarham al-Atqiyya, and I am one of them, okay? So I cannot say that I'm wishing him well. I says, Rabbna Yarhamhum, wa yarhamna kaman. So we would pass away and leave it to the younger generation to continue. Let's not hinder them. And there's a lot of hindrance, and I see it left and right, and this is what prevents the younger people from coming in. I asked my son, both of them are attorneys. I says, why don't you come on and join? He says, Dad, I don't know how you put up with it. It's all, it's all nonsense. The structure, the way they do it, or the way they run their business meetings, it is a farce. People talk for the sake of talking, but say nothing, and they don't contribute anything. And you want me to come into these things? I said, wait a while, maybe things will change. And I hope things will change and the younger generation will come in, and we should encourage them, not discourage them. But we should encourage them with our donations, and there isn't any. For instance, and this is a bad scene over and over again. The new president comes in, he appoints the committees. Most of the people that he appoints at the committees are friends or relatives or what have you, and they're not even a paid member of the organization. I'm a member of my society. I'm a lifetime member. I'm a lifetime member of my alma mater. These things are a natural instinct of people. If you call yourself a Ramallah person, are you a paid member, or because you were born in Ramallah person, you think you are part of the federation? Federation comes in, it requires money. And that money, where is it going to come? God doesn't drain any money. It's going to come either from you, me, or investments, or what have you. And our people don't have that milk of kindness in their heart. This is my own observations, and I will speak about it to any group at any time. And if I am wrong, I would stand to be corrected.